Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to day 5 of our Power BI Made Easy in 10 days class. So this class is going to make it half of the complete program, and today we are going to be looking at something on data modeling, the first part of it, which is going to deal with calculations. So we'll learn how to write a couple of DAX and how to use some very useful DAX functions for performing analysis in Power BI. So my name is Ahmed Oyelo, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, also an MCSA BI reporting, that's Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate, also certified in advanced financial modeling from the Financial Modeling Institute, and currently I manage Foresight BI and Analytics. So I have my social handles here. You can follow me on Twitter at African Analyst. On LinkedIn, look for Ahmed Oyelo, and I have a couple of videos on YouTube as well where I record videos on how to do things using Power BI. So you can search for Foresight BI on YouTube and follow up that channel. So the objective for today is, first we are going to look at an overview of DAX and calculations in Power BI, so more like introduction, and then we'll see how to create new columns in Power BI, how to write very simple DAX measures. Then we are going to introduce ourselves to a very powerful function in DAX, that is a calculate function, which you can only understand really when you know what the evaluation context of DAX means. Then we'll also use DAX to create date tables and time intelligence calculations in Power BI. So first we need to take a look at an overview of DAX and how calculations work in Power BI. So the calculations you can do in Power BI are being powered by a language called DAX. DAX simply means data analysis expressions. So it is very similar to what you have inside Excel, except that Excel formulas doesn't really have a name. Formula is formula. But for Power BI, it is called the DAX language, and it is a language that is also used in other applications as well. So this language was first introduced in 2010 from Power Pivot in Excel. So if you use Excel very well, then you probably would have heard of Power Pivot. So Power Pivot was the one that gave birth to the DAX language. So DAX is also used in SQL Server analysis services as well. So you can use DAX basically to do three things in Power BI. You are either using DAX to generate a new column, or you are using DAX to create new tables, or you are using DAX to write measures. So we are going to explain what all of these things mean, but let me just jump over to my Power BI desktop now. Okay, so this is Power BI desktop, for example, and you can see that from the tabs that we have here, if I come to my modeling tab, you will see a group called calculations, and under this group for calculations you will see that we have 4 buttons here. And even though we have 4 buttons, it is really about 3 things. So the first 2 buttons are about measures. So one is new measure, the other one is quick measure. We'll explain the difference between these two later on. Then we have new column and we have new table. So this tells us that really if we want to write formulas in DAX, or we want to perform calculations in Power BI, then our calculations can be used to do any of these 3 things. Either we'll create a new column, or we'll create a new table, or we'll write measures, right? So but the first thing is this. Let me explain the demo data set that we are going to be using here, so that we can all be on the same page and we can understand the flow of the formulas we are going to be writing later on. So I'll come over to my data view here. So you know we have 3 views in Power BI. We have the report view where you create your report. We have the data view where you can have a look at the data that you have brought into Power BI. Then we have the model view where you are going to spend some time tomorrow when Hafiz is going to be taking us on relationships on part 2 of this data modeling. So if I come to my data view here now, this is the data set that we have. And if we take a quick look at the data set. Judging by the kind of column headers that we have, you see the first thing is order ID. So this kind of tells us that we are dealing with an online shopping, perhaps something that looks like an Amazon or relating to Jumia here in Nigeria. So somebody goes in on a particular date to make an order, so you have an order ID. Then the order gets shipped by a particular ship mode. So this ship mode, it can either be shipped by first class shipment or same day or second class. Of course, this is going to determine the kind of charges that you pay depending on how fast you want your goods. Then we have the customer's details in terms of the ID of the customer, the person's name, and how they have classified that customer. Is it a corporate customer, or is he a consumer retail customer, or a home office kind of person? Then we have details of locations of where the person is ordering from and where the goods basically has to be shipped to. So this is typically something that's only is just data for the United States. So we have cities where the goods will be going to, or where the person is ordering from. Then we have the state, postal code, and region. Then we also have details of the product that is being ordered in terms of the name, the category of the product. Is it office supplies? Is it technology? Or is it furniture? And we also have details of the transactions itself in terms of the money, which is the main thing. So we have sales, we have quantity, discount, and profit. So this data is what we are going to be using throughout this demo. No additional data is going to come in until we create a new table. So let me go back to my slide. Okay. So the first thing we are going to take a look at is how do we even create new columns in Power BI. So in Power BI, or let's say any of those tools that uses the DAX language, it could be in Power Pivot. So new columns, we also call them calculated columns. So when you hear calculated columns, we simply means you are creating a new column. So if you are creating a new column, you need to run that by a formula or calculation. So typically you want to create new columns either when you need a field in your report. So field means column. If you are coming from an Excel background, then you'll be used to column. But if you are coming from a proper data background, then we call columns fields as well. So when you have, you need to do a report, for example, and your data doesn't have a particular column, which means you need to derive that column out. Then you need to create an additional column. And you can generate that new column either by writing a formula on the fly. So when we see on the fly, what I typically mean by on the fly is the fact that you just use operators like, for example, just this column plus this column, or this column minus that column. Or you can use DAX functions to generate your new columns. So let's see how we do something like that. So if we take a look at this, our data again, so assume that, for example, we would like to create a report that has to do with costs. So when you take a look at this, you will see that in terms of the money value we have values for sales, we have values for quantity, we have discount, and we have profit. So which means we can only report sales and profit, we can't report cost. Cost is also an essential element for decision making as well. So what if we would like to do some reports that has to do with cost? It means we need to find a way of creating a column that will derive that cost. And simple mathematics is just for you to be able to get cost. If you have your sales and you have your profit, you just have to minus your profit from your sales, then you have your cost. Okay, so easy way for you to do that is anytime you are working on creating new columns, first of all, you need to make sure that you are on the data view here. So don't be on report view, be on data view. So once you're on data view, select the table that you want to create a column inside. So you have on your right hand side there, you have fields pane. So on this fields pane, you usually have a list of tables. So if you have more than one table, for example, if I collapse this guy orders, if you have more than one table, then you see a list of tables here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever numbers you have. But in this case, we have just a single table. So first thing is, you come over to the data view here, then you come over to the fields pane and you select the table where you would like to add column into. So once you select that table here, the first thing you will see is on the top of your Power BI tabs, you will see an active tab called Table Tools. So this will allow you to do some operations on tables. In this case, what we want to do is we want to create a new column. Okay, so the new column button, when you click on the new column button, first thing you will see is you have your formula bar active now, and it's showing column equals to. So first lesson you need to learn in creating calculations in Power BI is every calculation you create, either you are generating a new table. Can you remember the other two scenarios for creating calculations? Think about it. So you are either creating a new table, or you are creating a new column, or you are creating a measure. So those three scenarios, whichever one you are creating, you must give that a name. So in this case, instead of leaving as column equals to, I'm going to clean this column and change it to cost. So it's going to be cost equals to. So cost equals to our sales minus profit is what I want to do now. But what you need to realize is, because sales is a column and profit is another column, best practice in writing DAX is anytime you need to refer to a column, always start with the name of the table. Okay, so the name of the table comes first, then the column that you want to pick goes with it. So in this case, I want to minus profits from sales, and both of them are under my orders table. So what I need to do is I'll come to here and I'll say orders first. I'll type in orders first. Then I have a list of all the columns that are inside my orders table, and I can scroll down to go and look for the one that belongs to sales. So order sales minus orders profit. So when I click enter, so now I have a new column. If I scroll over to the right hand side, I can see my column for cost, which means I now have an extra column in my report, in my data, that I can use to create reports. So now I can create a report by cost as well. So this is me using one method of adding a column, which is just creating on the fly using normal operators. We are going to see how to create extra columns later using function. That is when we get to creating a table, creating that date table that we'll create later on here. Okay, so let's talk about measures now. Okay, so measures are different from calculated columns because measures are computations that you store inside. It's like just creating a formula that you just store inside your Power BI. So it's not physical. It's not something you see physically, in terms of you can see a column physically, you can see a table physically, but when you write a measure, you can't see that physically. So we say we have two types of measures in Power BI. We have the implicit measure and we have the explicit measure. So the implicit measure is something that you don't write by yourself. So once you go to your report in Power BI and you just drag one column and you drag, say for example, you do a report, let's say sales by region, and you just bring up your sales column and your region column, so you see your results normally, right? So what you are seeing there in terms of your sales result is implicit because you have not written a formula for it. So I'll show you what implicit is, and I'll show you how we can write our own explicit measures. So writing explicit measure is what gives you power over analyzing data in Power BI, so you can do a lot more when you have control on the measures that you are writing. Okay, So writing measures basically will mean that you need to make use of DAX functions. So you can use simple aggregator functions, for example, like we have the sum, we have average, just normal things that you can see inside Excel as well. So I mentioned earlier that the result of measures can only be displayed inside a visual. So it's not something you see normally, and that's where the thinking of DAX has to be different from how you think when you write formulas in Excel. So when you write a formula in Excel, instantly you are seeing your result, but when you write a measure, you don't get to see your result until you pull up a visual. So let's go over to our demo in Power BI. So let me pull up a very quick report now. So I'm going to use a table visual. So click on table on my visualizations pane here. Let me expand this. Then I want to do a report. Let's say this cost that I created earlier. Let's see our costs by region. So first I will go and click on check the box for my region column. Then I'll check the box for my costs column that I created earlier. Let me increase the size so it is more legible. Okay, so this is our costs by region, and this costs, how does Power BI know that Central has 461,000, East has this, South has that? That is because DAX has gone to do a calculation under the hood, and that calculation under the hood has been carried out is what we refer to as implicit measures, because we are not the ones that wrote this calculation to sum up the cost by region, sum up the cost for East, Central, South, or West. It is done implicitly in Power BI. So if I come back to my visualizations pane here, I leave this format side where I increase the size, I come over back here to the fields. So when I click on the drop down beside this cost, you can see that it is automatically set to sum. So even if I don't want to do sum, let's say I would like to do average, or I would like to do minimum, maximum, count, whatever I want to do, this is where I'll come to change the kind of calculation that Power BI is reporting. So by default, it will always report sum for a numerical field, and by default it will always report count for a text field. So if I change this to average for a second, now you see the values here is going to change to average. So now you can see the value has changed to average, and I'm just going to go back and make it sum. So now that is implicit measure now, and we can also derive the same thing by writing it ourselves as explicit measure. So that explicit measures will always be available to us later on, such that we can do more powerful things, and we'll see how that is going to help us as time goes on. So if I want to write this same thing explicitly now, of course, you know where I need to go to. I need to go to my modeling tab. Then I need to select what? I need to select new measure. As always, I have to change this name from measure equals to, so I'm going to call this, I can't use cost equals to because cost is already a column in the data, so I can't give a measure the name of a column. So I'll just make this cost instead, if there is anything like that. So cost with an S. So the cost is going to be equals to a very simple sum function. So equals to sum, S-U-M. Then you can see what sum says. Sum says it adds all the numbers in a column. That's what this function is going to do for me. And the argument for sum needs a column name. So I need to supply a column name for this sum function to work. So when I open my brackets now, I need to follow that same methodology of writing formula, because I want to select a column. I need to call the name of the table first, and then the name of the column. So in this case, because I have only a single table, I can see that table already, orders, and I want to say I need to sum up the cost column. So I'll go and pick the cost column, close my brackets, and hit enter. So on my fields pane here, you will see that I now have something that looks like a calculator button. So you can see that we have different icons showing up on the fields area that just tells us the kind of field that is showing up. So when you see this one that looks like a column, you know you are looking at a calculated column. When you see this one that looks like a calculator, you know you are looking at a measure. So I can add this same thing to this report by just checking this box here for costs. And you can see that the values are basically the same thing, so they have the same values. Now I can also control the kind of formatting that this is showing up. So for example, now once I have this measure selected for costs, you can see at the top that I have my measure tools tab activated. I can change the format of what is showing. So if I click on this dollars now, it's going to show in dollars. Okay, so this is it showing in dollars with so many decimal places. So I can control what that is also showing up as well. So I can make these just 2 decimal places. Okay, so if we didn't want to use sum, we could have just changed. Maybe we would need to create another measure. For example, it's a matter of coming back to the modeling tab here, then clicking on new measure again and creating something else. Say for example average or count or whatever we need to create. But we are going to save time and we'll just jump next to my slide now. So we have created simple measure. We'll create more measures later on when we start to do time intelligence formulas, which is actually coming up shortly. But before we do time intelligence formulas, let's talk about how the DAX engine works in Power BI. So how does, when we wrote a simple formula equals to sum of a particular column, how does DAX know that that is the correct result for the reports that we are currently viewing? So the result for DAX in terms of measures mostly is usually determined by the context under which it is evaluated. So when we say context, DAX context is broadly categorized into 2. We have the filter context and we have the row context. I will explain what these 2 means. So the filter context is usually determined by what is currently selected on your particular report page. So what you select on your report page determines your filter context. Why the row context is talking about that formula that you are writing, which rows on your table does it affect. Now the understanding of this filter context will allow us to know that what if we don't want our formula to do the default filters context. So we'll see how important that is going to be when we start writing time intelligence formulas. So calculate is a single function in DAX that can alter that our evaluation context. So to make this easier for us to understand, let me switch over back to Power BI. So now I have this report showing now. How does DAX know that when I wrote equals to sum of orders costs, I never put anything there to say the central is equals to this or the east is equals to that? DAX just automatically goes to my Power BI table. Is going to filter because under this row now what I have selected is central. So what DAX is going to do is it will go to my table, that's my orders table, and it will filter the region to show only central. So after it filters the region to show only central, then this sum that I've written here is now going to work. The same thing is going to happen for east, south, and west. Even if I have other things on this my report page. So for example now, if I come and add a slicer, so a slicer can be used to filter your report. So if I add a slicer here, and for my slicer, let's say I put in something like let me use category, for example. So where is category? Category is products category, I guess. I have subcategory. Where is my category? Okay, so this is category up here. So if I check the box for category, okay, so now this report, if I select technology, for example, then you can see that the values have changed. So what this is doing under the hood is all the things I currently have selected is going to be filtered on the data before the sum function is going to apply. So in this case, we say the filter context for this report now is region, because it's going to filter the region column, and whatever region is selected is what the sum is going to work on. And the second filter context for this report is the category. So whatever category is selected is what DAX is going to sum for. So in this case now, this 136,718 that you are seeing for this cost here is as a result of the fact that we have central selected here and we have technology selected here. So when I change this to office supplies, you will see the values is also going to change here. So when the value changes, the filter context is now being done on the office supplies category and central or east or south or west. So in simple terms, the filter context is basically what you have selected on your report visual is what is going to determine what you are seeing. So every time you create a report like that, what you have selected is what is going to determine what you are seeing. But if you want to do some advanced form of calculations, say for example, let's say I would like to compare everybody's values here to the south. So I like to compare the value of all these guys, all these regions. I want to compare their values, the cost. I want to compare it to the cost in our southern region. So that means I need to find out the difference between every region's cost and that of the southern region. You know, when we already understand that there is no way that is going to be possible, because once central is selected here, central will always come up. Once east is selected here, east will always come up. South will always come up here, and west will always come up here. But this time around, I'm saying that, you know what, I don't want central values. I want to see the value for east so that I can compare central with east. Here I want to see the value for the same east. I want to see the value for east here, so that, okay, I think we are using south instead. So I want to compare the value of central here to the value of south. I want to compare the value of east to the value of south and all that. That means I need to be able to control what this filter context is saying in such a way that I can put something like, you know what, I want to run this calculation, but I want to ignore this particular filter context here, which is the region. I would like just to show me the value for south instead. So anytime you are doing such calculations, then you have to use the calculate function in DAX. So let's see how we can do something like that. So if I come to my modeling tab here, I can click on new measure again. Then I'll give this measure a name. So let's just call this something like south cost. Okay, so because we are doing a summation, but we don't want that summation to follow the exact filter context that we have on this visual, I always want to return the cost for the southern region. That means I want to alter the filter context. I know that I need to use a function called calculate, which happens to be the most powerful function in DAX. So I'll say equals to calculate. Then I open my bracket. So you say calculate, evaluate an expression in a context modified by filters. So calculate has, let's say, 2 or 3 arguments or more. Let's say 2 or more arguments. So the first one is the expression, which is that calculation I'm running exactly. So in this case, I want to do a calculation of the sum of costs. Remember, I've already written a measure earlier called cost. So I can just come here and type that cost here. So it is a measure. I don't need to supply a table name first. So cost is my expression. Then I'm putting a comma. Now this filter argument is going to tell me that what filter, how do I want to modify the filter context. So how I want to modify this filter context is I want to calculate the cost, but what I really want to return is calculate the cost for me for only when the region, so region is going to be other region, so when the region is equals to south. So I need to put that south in double quotes. So when you're writing DAX measures and you need to manually type out a text, you need to put that text in double quotes. Then I'll close the double quotes and I close my brackets. Hit enter. So if I select this my visual now and I come over to my fields pane, let's go and look for south cost. So this is my measure for south cost. Once I just check this box here, you will see what I'll have. So as you can see now, the filter context has now been ignored for the region. So this filter context on region is now ignored. So instead of me to have the same amount, the same cost amount for central, what I'm seeing instead is the amount for south. So all the way down, it will always show me the amount for south because I have modified the filter context to show south. So this will be more interesting once we get to time intelligence formulas. You will see how this becomes really powerful tool for us to use calculate function in Power BI. So with this one, for example, now I could write a new measure that just says let's compare the cost of the region to the cost of the south, so we can know which is bigger or which is smaller, which is going to be another simple measure. So I can come and write a new simple measure now. So modeling again, then new measure. So I can just call this one something like, let's just use something like let's say variance from south, if that makes any sense. So variance from south. So variance from south is going to be equals to let's say, which one should we use first? Let's use the cost first. So cost minus south cost. So I can even remove this original implicit measure here. So I'll come over here to my visualizations and I'll just cancel this one, this X, click on this X mark to remove that implicit measure. Okay, so this just typically is a small report that tells us how every region is doing in comparison to the southern region. As you can see that they are all actually selling more than southern region by this amount that we have here. So you can see how powerful it's going to be when you use explicit measures. So implicit measures would not have been able to allow us to do something like this, but explicit measures can allow us to do something like this, because now we can have control over how we modify the filter context and create more formulas with explicit measures. So let's go over to the slides again and move on to the next step so that we can write more and more measures. So now we are going to see how you can use DAX to create new tables, and we are going to write plenty more measures, this time around time intelligence measures. So time intelligence is one of the most important reports you can create in DAX. So if you think about it, we humans are always looking back in time or looking forward in time. So those are the two things that mostly determine how we make decisions, historical or futuristic. So those two things are based on time. So DAX has some functions that we call time intelligence functions that makes it easy for us to do some calculations that we refer to as time intelligence calculations, such as year to date. You want to calculate how much sales you have made year to date. You want to see how much sales you have made quarter to date. You want to compare your sales of this year versus the sales of last year, and so many other things, reports that has to do with time like that. So these time intelligence functions in DAX will only work well if you have a dedicated calendar table within your model. So, but remember, how do you get to have a calendar table separately? We only have a single table now, which is the orders table, but then we want to create a separate table for calendar alone. So that table is going to have a list of dates, just like a calendar, a list of dates. We can decide to add columns that we have month, year, quarter on that particular table, so that we can easily create those our time intelligence formulas. So a date table can be created using a function, a DAX function called calendar auto. So when I go over to the demo, you will see how we use calendar auto to create that date table, and we will also use some other functions. So this will add to the vocabulary of DAX functions that we'll learn today. So far we have used only one single DAX function, which is equals to sum. So before we complete this, we would have used at least 5, depending on how much time that we have. So calendar auto is going to be our new function that will add to our vocabulary of DAX functions today. And let me switch over back now to my Power BI demo. And I'm going to delete this report for a second. So now I want to create a new table. I want to create a date table. We know we are going to use a function called calendar auto to do that. So let me first explain what calendar auto is going to do for us. So if I come to my data view here, and let's say I sort this my date column to go from lowest to highest. So sort in ascending order. So you can see that my first date here, my first date in this data is 3rd of January 2014. And my last date, if I scroll all the way down, is 30th of December 2017. So that is 3/01/2014 to 30/12/2017. So what calendar auto is going to do for us is calendar auto is going to create a column in a table, a date column in a table that's going to have all the dates between 2014 and 2017. That's all the dates between 2014 and 2017. If you think about it, if you are doing a business, it's not compulsory that you make sales every day. You may not make sales every day. So there are some days that you may not make sales. So it is possible that there are days within this our orders table that doesn't have sales. So which means we could have some missing dates here. But the date functions on Power BI or the date functions in DAX always require something they call contiguous date, which means the date must be continuous. You must have every day. So anytime you are using a function in DAX that requires date argument, that date argument usually wants you to supply a date column that has all the dates inside. Okay, so that is contiguous date, and that's what calendar auto is going to do for us. That is the reason why DAX always requires that you have a dedicated date table that will have all those dates present. Okay, so calendar auto will give us a list of dates that will have every date from 1st of January 2014 to 31st of December 2017. And how do I go about creating that again? Who can remind me again? How do I do that? Can I remember? So let me go back to my reports view. And where do I go to write DAX formulas again? I need to go to modeling tab. So I'll be on modeling tab, and what I want to do this time, I'm not writing a measure, I'm not creating a column. I want to generate a table, a calendar table. So I will use new table instead. As always, I must give my table a name. So I like to call it calendar. So calendar equals to, the function we want to use is calendar auto, So you can see that there are two of such functions that works with calendar. So one is calendar and the other one is auto. You can guess what the difference is. The auto is just the difference there. One generates automatically. The other one, you need to specify what your start date is and what your end date is. So I think it's easier for us to go with calendar auto. Then I'll open my bracket. And calendar auto has just one single argument, which happens to be in square bracket. So any argument you see in square bracket means it is optional, which means you can ignore it. So I'm just going to ignore this fiscal year end month, because fiscal year end month typically means that if I don't want my calendar to generate from January to December, I want a different kind of calendar, maybe April to March or September to August, a different kind of 12-month calendar. You know how financial calendars are sometimes. Not everybody follows January to December. But we are going to go with the auto one. So I'm just going to close the bracket here and I'll hit enter. So I should have a new table now. If I come to my fields pane and I scroll up, you can see that I have a new table called calendar, and it has one single column for dates. Now, the first thing you need to do when you generate a calendar table like that is you have to tell Power BI that Power BI, this is my own calendar table that I want to use for my reports. So when you ask me for a date column, I'm going to refer to that date column from this my calendar table. So how do we tell Power BI that? If I select this table now, just by clicking on the name of the table, calendar, you can see that I have table tools activated now, and from these table tools you have a group called calendars and you have a button called mark as date table. So if I click on this mark as date table, I can select mark as date table. Then it's going to ask me what was my date column. Of course, my date column is this date column within this date table. Then I'll click OK. So let's go and take a look at this date table. How do we go there? If I want to see the table itself, I want to see the data on this table, I need to go to my data view. So data view, I'm still seeing orders. Why am I not seeing calendar? I'm not seeing calendar because I need to select calendar here. Remember I mentioned that earlier. So I need to click on calendar. Then I can see a single column that has all my dates. So if I want to do a report and I want to show my report by month, I want to show my report by year or by quarter or any other variant of dates, that means I need to create extra columns on this my dates table that will serve that purpose. Remember, when do we use a calculated column? We use a calculated column when we need a field in our report that is presently not on our data that we need to derive. So now we need to make use of calculated column once again now. And how do we do that? Because I'm already in my calendar table, I already have one column selected. I can see my column tools is active here, and I can click on new column. So I want to create a column for month now. So I'll click on new column. Then I can give this column a name. So this is going to be called month. MONTH. So month is going to be equals to what now? What is month? We are going to add to our DAX vocabulary. So we need a function in DAX. And what we want to do now is we want that function to look at this date column, and we want that function to help us just kind of like extract only the name of the month from this date column. So just extract the name of the month. So one function that can do that for us is format. So if I type in format, forget about the description that says convert a value to text in the specified number format. So what this is simply going to do is it's going to pick this same thing that we have on this dates column, but this time around it will change how you are seeing it. So instead of you to see 1/1/2014, you will only see January 2014. So it will only show you the month name part of that column. So format, and I open brackets. So format has two arguments. The first one is the value. So the value is what am I trying to convert? What am I trying to extract from? Of course, I'm trying to extract or convert this date column. So I'll need to call up the column. Of course, I need to type the name of the table first. So calendar date. So this is my value. then comma. Now I need to specify a formatting code that will look at that date and just show it like the name of a month. So that code that can return month for us is MMM, our lovely MMM. Okay, so I'm going to put that in double quotes first, and for a second I'll just use 4M, 1 2 3 4. Then I'll close the quotes and I'll close the bracket, and when I hit enter, so you can see that I have a new column for month, and it's showing the full month name, January, February, all the way to December, like that. You can see if I check at the bottom here, it says 12 distinct values, so 12 different months on this column. So, but I like to work with a different code. I don't like to work with the full month name, so I like to work with a short month name because that will give me more real estate space in my report. So I can just shorten this guy from 4M to the 3-letter M, which is the usual MMM. When I hit enter, you see this code will now change it to show the month in the short form. So that's one new column, month. We're going to create another new column again. So I'll come here and click on new column. This time I want something for year, so I can claim this column equals to and make it year equals to. Still, I need to do exactly the same kind of thing, but this time around I need to use a format code that will return the year name instead, right? So equals to format, open bracket, my value remains calendar dates. I want to format this dates, comma, double quotes, I want YYYY, double quotes, close and enter. So one more column. Let's create a column for quarter. So new column again. So let's call this quarter. And quarter is going to be equals to the same format, the same calendar date, comma. Then the format for quarter is Q. So if I put capital Q and close my quotes, close my brackets, and I hit enter, so if I click on the drop down for quarter, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So quarter really has some very interesting format code. So if I want to see Q1 instead of just 1, 2, 3, and 4, I want it to show as Q1, Q2. All I need to do is change this my code here from ordinary Q to a backslash QQ. So backslash QQ is going to show me as Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Okay, so now I have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Of course, we may have to come back to create an extra column if we need that later on. But let's first of all go and see how this is going to affect our report. So I'm going to go back to my report view. Then let me use a metrics table this time around for obvious reasons. So I'm going to call up a metrics table. So a metrics table in Power BI is similar to a pivot table in Excel. So the difference between the ordinary table and the metrics table is this. When you use an ordinary table, every field you add from here is going to go into a new separate column. But when you use a metrics table, you can control where your field is going to. Should it go inside rows or should it go inside columns? So just like a pivot table in Excel. So I'm going to bring year and put it under rows. Then I'll bring month, put months under the year under the rows. So I'll increase the size to make it legible. just come in here and type in size so I can easily get to the format. So let's make this something like let's say 18. Cool. So the first thing you notice is I just dropped two things. I dropped here and I dropped month, but I can only see the years. That's because you can only see one thing on a row at a time except you drill down. So these plus buttons can allow me to drill down on 2014, for example. And the first thing you will notice is that my months are not arranged in the correct order. It's actually arranged in the correct order of alphabetical orders, but not in the natural order of January 1st, December last. So that's the first problem we have here. So let's see if we have another problem. What if I now want to create a report that shows me the total cost per every month of every year? So now I have my year. Then I need to go and check the box for costs, which is this my measure for cost here. It is funny how this is returning the same values all the way for every month and for every year. So right now, Power BI is like, what's this guy doing? Are you whining me, or what is this all about? So now I have two tables in my report. I have a calendar table and I have an orders table. I've gone to my calendar table to pick month and year. Then I went to my orders table. Basically, the costs formula is working on the orders table. I went there to bring my costs. So these two tables are separate tables. There is no way I can do reports by these two tables at the same time, except they have something in common, except they are related by something. So they need to talk to each other. Of course, you will see more about data modeling and relationships in tomorrow's class. So this is just like a primer to tomorrow's class. So if I come back to the model view now, so on model view, you can see my two tables and you can see that they are not friends. They are not talking to each other. This one is separate. This other one is separate. But going by what both of them have in common, so what they have in common can join them together, which is dates. So I can drag this order date from here and I'll say I'm introducing you, this table. I'm introducing you to this date on this table. Okay, so if I click on this line, it's just going to show me what is connected to what in yellow. So now we can see that these two tables are now friends. They are now talking to each other because the dates column, the order dates column on the orders table knows the dates column on the calendar table, which means that there is going to be a relationship that will now flow into the calendar table in such a way that this date that's related to these dates can now be able to pick the month, the year, and the quarter. So if I go to my report view now, you will see that the values have now changed accordingly. So April is now summing for April based on the filter, August is summing for August, and everything works perfectly because they are now talking to each other. So the two different tables are now friends. Okay, that's solving one problem. Solving the other problem of months arranging in the natural order, I need to be able to kind of like force Power BI to always bring up January 1st, always bring up February 1st. So the only way I can do that, because right now what Power BI is saying is because this month column is a text column, and in Power BI's own smartness, it feels that naturally it should just order it in alphabetical orders. But if I come back to my data view, I need to be able to create an extra column now that is going to be like a guide to this my calendar table. So that column is going to guide this month column in such a way that anytime I pick anything from this month column, you should always sort it by this my new guiding column, right? So something else I need in my model now, I need to create a new calculated column for it. Okay, so I'll have to come back here and click on this quarter. Then let's say just click on any of the columns that basically works. Then I will select new column. I'll create something called month number. So month NO. And the objective for me is this. I need a column that will have 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 12 serial numbers. So that once I have that, I can direct this column to sort by that 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember that January is always going to be 1. So I'll need a function in DAX that can give me the number of the month that this date belongs to. So just like we have used format to extract the names out, I need a function that can give me the numbers of the month that is inside this date. And that function is as simple as month. So equals to month. So when you read the description for month, it says returns a number from 1, that is January, to 12, that is December, representing the month. So when I open my bracket, month has a single argument, which is date. And where is my date? My date is on my calendar table. So calendar, date, close brackets, hit enter. So I have a new column called month number. This column is going to have 1 to 12. And what we now want to tell Power BI now is, Power BI, excuse me, I want you to always sort this month column. So I'm going to click on this month column here. Then I'll come to column tools at the top. I'll say Power BI, I want you to always sort this column by this month number. So that will bring me to this sort by column button here. Okay, so I'm saying sort the month column by the month number. So if I go back to my report view, let's go and see the magic. You can see that it is now properly sorted from January to December and for each of the years. So now we are going to move on. We now have our date table intact. Now we can create more DAX measures. This time around we can create some time intelligence measures that can show us more insights from our costing report. So the first measure I would like to write has to do with, let's say I want to do a month-on-month kind of comparison. So I want to compare month-on-month costs. Maybe I would like to see a month-on-month variance eventually. So remember that by the natural filter context, any measure I drop on this table report will always give me whatever is selected. So no matter what I drop on this report, January 2014 will always go and filter to January 2014 and give me what I have there. February 2014 will always filter to February 2014 and give me what I have there. But if I want to do something like to compare month on month, which means I'm in January here, or let's say I'm in February here, but I want to compare this February amount by a January amount that is going to appear on the next column here. That means I need to be able to alter this my filters context. Instead of showing me February figures, I want to see the January figures instead. Okay, which means I need to be able to use calculate function. So I'm going to combine calculate function with some kind of time intelligence functions to create this report. So I'll come to my modeling tab. So first, another way you can create measures or tables is not necessarily coming to modeling tab. You can also come to your table here, right click anywhere on a selected table and select new measure. So this is going to be called, let's call this previous month cost. So we're just going to use a short form for previous month. I'll just put PM cost. So PM cost equals to, I need to alter the filter context, so I have to start with calculate. So calculate, what do I want to calculate? I want to calculate the cost that I've written earlier on, comma. Now the way I would like to do this is I want to modify the filter context to something else. Okay, so I don't want the cost for a particularly selected month. I want the cost for a previous month. So there is a function in DAX called previous month. So I'll just call up previous month. So you can see previous month returns a previous month. So I'll open a bracket. So previous month has just one single argument, and that is date. So where do I have my dates table? My dates table is on my calendar. So my dates column rather is on my calendar table. Then I can close my bracket for previous month. Then I'll close my bracket for the calculate function as well. So that is close brackets twice. And I hit enter. So if I come here and I'll check the box for PM costs, adding that to this report, you can see that now February is no longer obeying the filter context of returning the values for February. It is now returning the values for January because I have used the calculate function to alter the filters to show a previous month instead. So now I'm going to I can now create a new measure now that can get me the difference between this cost that is currently filtered by the currently selected month by the previous month. So I can come back here, right click, and select new measure. So let's call this month-on-month cost variance. So I can just use short form again, MOM cost variance, which is going to be equal to the simple cost, that simple cost measure, minus the cost for the previous month, PM cost. Enter. I can also add that to this report by checking this box. Okay, so one thing I could also do is to basically, instead of showing the results like this in absolute values, I may want to see it in percentages, so like a percentage change kind of report. So let me just come and create a new version of this. So new measure. So let's call this one MOM percent cost variance. So MOM percent cost variance. So that's going to be equals to, I can use a function, a divide function. So divide. So what's going to be at the top? Which one should be at the top? Is it the variance, or is it the variance or the current month or the previous month? So let's see, numerator has to be the variance. So the variance is MOM cost variance, comma, then the denominator should be the previous month, so that will give us the change. So that is PM cost, and the last argument is optional, like we said, because it's in square bracket. That is the alternate result, but this is useful when there is nothing on the previous month, for example. So if you look at January 2014, there is nothing there because we had no information as at December of 2013, no data for that. So for that, I can put a comma and put an alternate result of 0, which means when there is nothing to divide by. So close my bracket, hit enter. So I can also add that to this report by checking this box. So let me expand this a little bit. So if you see, it's showing as absolute numbers like this, but you know we have to show this as percentage. So all I need to do is ensure that my measure is still selected so I can see it inside the formula bar like this. Then I can just click on this percentage here. Okay, so it's looking good now. So I'm just going to do one more, and I'll give you guys assignments, a specific assignment on what to do. So you have to do all of this. Of course, we are going to share the data sets. I'm also going to share this Power BI desktop file, of course, without this my calendar table. So I'll make sure I remove this calendar table before sharing it, so that you can go through the video and create all of this again from scratch. Then I'll give you an assignment on particular DAX formulas that you need to write, still following this same format, so you can get your hands on writing DAX for a start. So let me write one more DAX measure, and this time around I want to do something around year to date. So year to date meaning that, for example, now why this is January 2014 and it is 11,000, I want 11,000 to show here as my year to date. When it gets to February, I don't want to see 3,000. I want it to do a year to date, that is add the January value to the February value and give me the results when you get to February. So when you get to March, add up January up till March and give me the result when you get to March. So that's going to be like our year to date as at March. So let's see how we can write that one as well. So I'll come here, right click, select new measure. So let's call this cost YTD. Costs YTD. So cost YTD is going to be equals to, of course, because the filter context has to change. So don't just show me the month, don't show me the current month, show me all the months from January up until current month. That is how we want to modify this now. So cost YTD is going to be equals to calculate. I want to calculate costs, comma. Now for the filter, I want to modify the current filters from showing just the month, January, February, March. I want to modify it to show all the months from January up until whatever month is currently selected. So one function, one time intelligence function that can help me do that is called date YTD. So dates YTD, can you see we have other variants of it as well? We have date MTD, date QTD. So I want to use date YTD, open bracket. Date YTD has two arguments. One of them is optional, so we are going to ignore that optional. So the date itself is from my calendar table. So calendar date. Then I'll close my brackets for date YTD, then close bracket again, this time around for the calculate function. So when I hit enter, and I add that to this report, so that is cost YTD. I check the box for cost YTD. So you can see that as at January, it is still 11,000. But as at February, 3,006 has been added to this 11,007 and is now 15,000. As at March, the 55,000 has been added to the January and February value. It is now 70,000. That is just to show you that calculate really can be used to modify the filter context that we currently have on a report. But then there is another way you could also calculate these year-to-date values using a function called total YTD, which is just a function they added much later on. But because of time, we are not going to be able to do that right now. Probably by the time we get to the advanced class in May, we will be able to write more measures, and by then you'll be more conversant with writing DAX formulas. Of course, there are other ways you could have used to create DAX. Let's say you don't even know how to write DAX, for example, and you would like to write some formulas and you don't know what to do. So Power BI has something called quick measures that they've used to simplify how we can write measures. In fact, you don't have to write the measures yourself. It's going to write out itself. So if I come to right click on this table, for example, again, and instead of selecting new measure now, let me select new quick measure. So new quick measure, you can see that I have a new table. I have a pop-up box here, and on the drop down I can select different kind of calculations. So different calculations, you can see under time intelligence, I have year to date, I have month to date, and all of those ones. So let's say I want to do a year to date, for example. So if I select this year to date as the calculation I want, then it gives me two boxes of arguments that I need to supply. The first one is the base value. I don't know what base value is. I can just hover my cursor on this little eye icon. It says the value whose total I want. So I want year to date total for cost, for example. So I'll come and expand my orders table here, and I can bring in either this cost column or this cost measure. Both of them are doing the same thing. They are both summing up the cost. So let me just drag the measure of costs and put that here as my base value. Then the next one is dates, and if I place my cursor, I say the date field over which to calculate the total. So where do I have my dates? My date is in my calendar table, and I can just drag dates and drop that here. And when I click OK, so you can see that I now have a new measure here. So the first one was cost YTD that I wrote myself, and DAX has created a new one using the name of the measure I put there, costs YTD, and it has used the other variant that we have mentioned earlier, the total YTD function. So instead of going the calculate route, it has gone to use another function that makes it easier to write year to date. So total YTD function is another function you can also use, even though total YTD as a function itself is running calculate under the hood. So this is what they call sugar coating of function in DAX. So it's a sugar coated function in DAX. So if you don't want to go the calculate route, you can use total YTD to calculate year to date. You can use total MTD to calculate month to date, but I had to demonstrate the calculate way of doing it so you can see the power of altering the filter context and the power of using the calculate function. So the assignment I'm going to drop for you now is I'll just give you a brief explanation of what you're expected to do. So you should basically come up with this same report that I have here, so which means you have to go over this video if you need to do the same report, and you need to give me an extra measure that is going to calculate same period last year for me. So same period last year, meaning that January 2015 here, we know that there is 21,455 in terms of cost. So when you create that new measure, you are going to drop that measure on this report. It's going to come somewhere on the right hand side here at the last column. And the value that it should show should not show the value for January 2015. It should show the value for January 2014 instead. So that kind of analysis will help you do some kind of trend analysis where you want to see seasonality. You want to see how the current month values is compared to the current month in the previous year. So you want to see if there is a seasonality pattern within your data. So I'll give you, of course, you know how to start that using calculate function, but I'll give you the name of the function that you can use to alter the filter argument such that instead of returning this current month, let it return the same type of current month but in a previous year. So that function is same period last year. Okay, so you are going to write your new DAX formula. You call it cost SPLY. SPLY stands for same period last year. So cost SPLY, you write your formula and you make it return, if it's January that is here or 2015, let it give you value for January of 2014. If you scroll down to 2016, if it's June 2016 that you have here, let it give you value for June of 2015. So once you write that, of course, you can we'll discuss on the group how you can submit that your assignments for review. So let's just go back to let's go back to our slide and round this up. So we have now seen we've seen an overview of DAX. We have seen how to create new columns, very simple basic column on the fly. We've also seen how to create columns using functions. We did that on the calendar table. We have written some very simple DAX measures with simple equals to sum. We've written some other ones by just subtracting one measure from another measure. Then we have been introduced to the calculate function, which is the most important DAX function because it is the only function that can alter the filter context, because we mentioned that the results of your reports in terms of DAX is going to be displayed based on the filter context and the row context, and the filter context is determined by whatever current selection you have. So if you need to do something different from the current selection, you have to use calculate to alter what the filter is doing. Then we have created date tables, and we've written a couple of time intelligence functions, and you have an assignment to complete on that. We've seen how calendar auto function can be used to generate a list of dates from the 1st January of the first year in our data to the 31st December of the last year in our data. We've created extra columns using the format function to extract the name of certain dates variants like months or years from a particular date. We also created a column for month number using the month function, so that we can use that to sort the months column so that it can arrange properly in our reports. So if you want to learn more about DAX really is a long-term game, and you can only learn it gradually. So we can discuss on the group how you can proceed on your knowledge of learning DAX. Of course, we are still going to have to take DAX classes in the advanced class, so by that time we can delve deeper into the DAX language. But you can check out this link to read more about DAX overview and start your journey on DAX. So on this note, we can take questions now. Of course, I had to do this in the recording because I'm not sure about my internet connection. It has been giving me hell since this lockdown has begun, and I would really not like to disappoint on this commitment. So I hope I'll be able to join on the Teams meeting anyway, but it's just not to have issues with sharing videos and delaying my voice against the visuals. I have to do this recording, but hopefully I can take some questions either via the chat box on Teams meeting if I'm able to join the meeting, or maybe we can also take questions on the group as well. So we have a group on the Kaizala, which I believe you must have joined that group by now, so we can take questions, and either myself or other Power BI gurus in the house will be able to handle all of those questions. So thank you for joining in on this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're able to do your assignments, and I hope to see people submit assignments so we can all do that review and take it further from there. So thank you once again. Questions now.